Good morning from East Coast Beach. This morning I want to talk about how exhausting and overwhelming recovering from trauma can be. I think we can tend to be very, very hard on ourselves, and I hope that this little share supports a shift into being a lot more compassionate and gentle with ourselves. There is so much that happens during our recovery process, and there are so many layers. And as we start to change and grow, there are huge amounts of new awareness that are happening, and our nervous system is working overtime to process all the new information, let alone to make changes. One of the layers of recovery where this occurs the most is in boundary setting. So there's usually a very big relational component to our trauma, and when we're recovering we start to have these new awarenesses of maybe how we're engaging, how someone else is engaging, and what that means. And so as we're having all of this awareness, our nervous system is working overtime to be present and exist, and to process all of this new information and make sense of it. And so that in itself can cause us to be very, very tired. Then when we start to try and actually affect change with all of that new information, there's yet another layer that our nervous system has to process. So an example might be, we'll be in an interaction, we'll have a trigger, a trauma trigger, and our nervous system is having whatever response it is. So it might be a racing heart, it might be clenching and bracing, or something else. So our nervous system's processing the experience, it's processing the trigger, it's processing the awareness, of hey, I'm triggered, and then it's trying to not go into the trigger, it's trying to stop that. What can happen then is a second trauma reaction. So when we catch ourselves in the trigger and we're trying to stop it, we're trying to engage differently. So it might be to express ourselves, it might be to set a boundary and disconnect, or something else. And when we do that, we can sometimes enter another trigger, which is often in relation to the potential abandonment. So there can be this fear that when I change my behavior, when I change the way I engage, whether it's to express or withdraw, say no, that the person that I'm relating to is going to abandon me or reject me. And that can send us into yet another state of overwhelm, which we need to manage and be able to stand in whatever our expression has been. And so knowing that our nervous system is going through all of those layers while we're trying to make changes, it's very normal and right for us to possibly feel exhausted and overwhelmed, and a bit like there's no ground underneath us. So what can we do? One is just to be aware, hey, I'm working overtime, changing the way I relate to this world. And see if we can allow ourselves a bit of space to allow that to integrate. And it takes time and it takes repetition, because that is how our nervous system learns. We learn through experience. The other thing to do is to provide lots of nourishing resources for yourself. So the idea of unconditional resource is really important when going through this stage of trauma recovery. Unconditional resource is something that is stable and there for you all the time, that is unchanging. Because while the world is changing around you and the way you're engaging with the world is changing, what we really need to access is stability, which is going to provide safety for these times. So unconditional resource comes in many forms. Ideally, we want it to be a human, but that's not always available. So we need to find other ways to access it. One might be to connect to the ground or the earth. So in my treatment room, I'm commonly asking people to feel the table underneath them or the floor beneath them, because it's very stable and it's unchanging. We can also lean up against a wall, or if you like to connect to nature, you can connect to the concept of the earth or the moon or the sun or something like that. Whatever it is, it's got to be something for you that is very real, and that provides you a sense of stability. And the reason I like to use the floor or the walls is because there is a somatic component, there is a really real physical component. So your body and your nervous system knows, okay, there's stability here, there's safety here. And I guess the reason I want to share this is because I really know how overwhelming and terrifying it can be when we start to change the way that we exist and connect to the world. And I know that it's the same for many people that I work with. So as always, I hope that this share provides a little bit of insight and supports you to shift towards a more compassionate